The bullet whizzed past Olivia Edwards's ear so close she felt the heat of it. And in that moment of pure terror, she understood that her desperate journey west might end before it truly began. The stagecoach lurched violently as the driver pushed the horses harder, but the bandits were gaining ground. Olivia gripped the wooden seat beneath her, her knuckles white against the dark fabric of her traveling dress. Across from her, an elderly gentleman clutched his hat to his chest, his weathered face pale with fear. The other passenger, a young mother with an infant, had begun to pray softly. It was September 1878, and Olivia had traveled all the way from Boston to Utah Territory, drawn by the promise of marriage to a man she had never met. Charles Patterson had written beautiful letters describing his prosperous mercantile business in Moab, painting pictures of a comfortable life in the growing frontier town. But Charles Patterson would not be waiting for her at the station. He had sent word just 2 weeks prior that he had reconciled with a former sweetheart and no longer required a bride. The letter had reached Olivia somewhere in Kansas, too late for her to turn back, too late to reclaim the life she had left behind. Now, as masked riders surrounded the stage with guns drawn, she wondered if fate had decided her journey should end in the red dust of Utah Territory. "Stop the coach!" The shout came from a man on a paint horse, his face covered with a dark bandana. The driver had no choice but to comply, pulling back on the reins until the stage came to a shuddering halt. 4 men circled them, rifles pointed. The leader gestured with his weapon. "Everybody out. Nice and slow." Olivia's legs trembled as she descended from the coach. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and she could taste dust in her mouth. The elderly gentleman helped the young mother down, and they stood in a small, frightened cluster. "Strongbox," the leader demanded of the driver. "Already told you there ain't nothing valuable on this run," the driver protested. The crack of a gunshot made Olivia jump. The leader had fired into the air. "The strongbox, now!" As the driver climbed down to comply, one of the other bandits approached the passengers. "Jewelry, money, anything valuable, hand it over." He thrust a burlap sack toward them. The elderly gentleman produced a pocket watch with shaking hands. The young mother began to cry softly as she surrendered her wedding ring. Then the bandit turned to Olivia. "You too, princess. Everything." Olivia reached for the small cameo brooch at her collar, the only piece of her mother's jewelry she had brought west. As her fingers touched it, something inside her rebelled. She had already lost so much: her family, her home, her promised future. This small piece of her mother was all she had left. "No," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The bandit stepped closer. "What did you say?" "I said no. This was my mother's. It's worth nothing to you but everything to me." The man's eyes narrowed above his bandana. He reached for the brooch and Olivia stepped back, raising her hand to slap his away. The motion caught his attention and he grabbed her wrist instead, twisting it roughly. "Let her go." The voice came from the ridge above them, strong and commanding. All heads turned to see a lone rider on a buckskin horse, sitting tall in the saddle with a rifle leveled at the bandits. "This ain't your business, friend," the leader called back. "Ride on. Can't do that." The stranger nudged his horse forward, beginning to descend the rocky slope. "Seems you're bothering these folks, and I was raised to help people in need." Olivia watched in disbelief as the man rode down alone to face 4 armed bandits. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dusty brown hat that shaded his face. His movements were unhurried, almost casual, but there was something in his bearing that spoke of competence and quiet strength. The bandit holding Olivia's wrist released her and went for his gun. The stranger was faster. His rifle barked once, kicking up dust near the bandit's feet. "Don't." "There's 4 of us and 1 of you," the leader pointed out, though his voice had lost some of its bravado. "True enough." The stranger had reached the bottom of the slope now, sitting easy in his saddle. "But I'll get at least 2 of you before you get me, and I'm betting none of you want to be one of those 2. A tense silence fell over the scene. Olivia could hear her own heart pounding in her ears. The infant began to fuss, and the young mother bounced gently, trying to soothe the child while keeping her terrified gaze on the standoff. "We got the strong box," one of the bandits said to the leader. "Maybe that's enough for today." The leader's jaw worked beneath his bandana. For a long moment no one moved, then he spat into the dust. "Mount up." The bandits backed toward their horses, weapons still drawn. The stranger kept his rifle trained on them, never wavering. Only when they had ridden a good distance did he finally lower his weapon. "Everyone all right?" he asked, his voice warm despite the tension of the moment. The elderly gentleman spoke first. "Thanks to you, young man. That was either very brave or very foolish." "Probably some of both," the stranger admitted with a slight smile. He swung down from his horse and approached the group. As he drew near, Olivia got her first clear look at his face. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps 30 or 31, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. Dark stubble shadowed his strong jaw, and when he removed his hat to wipe his brow, she saw thick brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. There was something weathered about him, not in age but in experience, as if the frontier had shaped him like wind shapes stone. "Name's Tucker Shepherd," he said, nodding to each of them. "I've got a ranch about 3 miles west of here." "Olivia Edwards," she found herself saying, extending her hand before she thought better of it. His hand, when it took hers, was warm and calloused, the grip firm but gentle. "You all right, Miss Edwards? That fellow didn't hurt you." "I'm fine, thanks to you." She realized she was still holding his hand and quickly withdrew it, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "That was remarkably brave, what you did. Couldn't ride past and leave folks in trouble." He turned to the driver. "They get much. Strongbox wasn't carrying anything valuable today, just some papers. I tried to tell them." The driver shook his head. "Appreciate the help, Mr. Shepherd. Don't know what they might have done if you hadn't shown up." Tucker nodded, then glanced at the sky. "Sun's going to set in a couple hours. You folks planning to continue to Moab tonight, if the horses aren't too spooked," the driver said. "Should get there just after dark. Mind if I ride along, just to make sure there's no more trouble?" Olivia felt an unexpected surge of relief at his words. The thought of him riding alongside them, watching over them, made her feel safer than she had since leaving Boston. The journey resumed with Tucker keeping pace beside the coach on his buckskin. Through the window, Olivia found herself watching him more than the passing landscape. He sat his horse with the ease of someone born to the saddle, moving with the animal rather than simply sitting atop it. Every so often he would scan the horizon, alert for any sign of danger. The elderly gentleman who had introduced himself as Mr. Henry Coleman noticed her attention. "Seems like a capable young man," he observed quietly. "Yes," Olivia agreed, tearing her gaze away from the window. "Very capable. Heading to Moab to meet someone." The question brought reality crashing back. "I was," Olivia admitted, "but circumstances have changed. I'm not entirely sure what I'll do now." Mr. Coleman's expression was kind. "Sometimes the best opportunities come from changed plans." "I've found that to be true more often than not in my 73 years. Olivia wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. She had exactly $14 to her name, no prospects, and knew no one in Moab. The young mother across from her caught her eye and offered a sympathetic smile, as if sensing her distress. The sun was indeed setting when the lights of Moab finally appeared in the distance. The small town sat nestled in a valley, surrounded by towering red rock formations that glowed like fire in the fading light. Olivia had never seen anything like the landscape of Utah Territory. Boston had been all brick buildings and cobblestone streets, gray skies and green parks. This was a land of impossible colors, vast spaces, and dramatic beauty. The stage pulled up in front of the station, and Tucker dismounted to help the passengers down. His hands spanned Olivia's waist as he lifted her from the coach, and for a brief moment their eyes met. She saw something there, a flicker of curiosity perhaps, or interest, before he set her gently on the ground and turned to help the young mother. Inside the station, a man in a vest and wire-rimmed spectacles looked up from his desk. "Evening, folks. Heard you had some trouble on the road." "How'd you hear that?" the driver asked. "One of the Jameson boys rode in about an hour ago, said he saw the aftermath from a distance, saw Tucker Shepard riding escort." The station master nodded to Tucker. "Appreciate you looking out for our passengers." "Just happened to be in the right place," Tucker said. The station master began processing the arrivals. Mr. Coleman was met by a younger man who embraced him warmly, clearly a relative. The young mother was collected by her husband, who swept both her and the baby into his arms with obvious relief and joy. Then there was only Olivia, standing with her single carpetbag in the growing twilight. "Someone meeting you, miss?" the station master asked. "No," Olivia admitted. "I need to find lodging for the night. Is there a respectable boarding house in town?" The station master scratched his chin. "Mrs. Henderson runs a clean place over on Main Street. Won't be cheap, though. She charges $2 a week." $2 a week would consume her savings in less than 2 months, and that was just for a room, not counting food. Olivia swallowed hard against the panic rising in her throat. "I can show you where it is," Tucker offered. "It's on my way." Grateful not to be wandering strange streets alone in the dark, Olivia accepted. Tucker took her carpetbag without asking, slinging it over his shoulder as if it weighed nothing, and led her down the dusty main street of Moab. The town was larger than she had expected, with a general store, a saloon, a church with a white steeple, and various other businesses lining the street. Lanterns were being lit in windows, casting warm pools of light into the gathering darkness. "You from back east?" Tucker asked as they walked. "Boston. You can probably tell from my accent. It's nice," he said simply. "Different from around here." "How long have you lived in Moab?" "My ranch is actually closer to the Colorado border, about 12 miles from town. I've been there 5 years now, built it up from nothing." "That must have been difficult." It was. He glanced at her and she saw something shadowed in his expression. "Still is sometimes. It's a lot of work for one person. You run it alone." "I've got 2 hands who help with the cattle and horses, but they've got their own places. It's just me at the house." They had reached a neat 2-story house with a sign reading Henderson's Boarding House hanging from the porch. Tucker set down her bag and turned to face her. "Miss Edwards, forgive me for being forward, but you seem like you might be in a difficult situation. If there's anything I can do to help, I'd be glad to." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Olivia blinked back sudden tears. "That's very generous, Mr. Shepard, but I couldn't possibly impose. You've already done so much." Wasn't an imposition. "I meant what I said if you need anything." "Thank you." She met his eyes and saw genuine concern there. "Truly, thank you for everything today." He tipped his hat to her. "Welcome to Moab, Miss Edwards. I hope it treats you kindly." She watched him walk back down the street, leading his horse, until he disappeared into the darkness. Then she picked up her bag and knocked on the boarding house door. Mrs. Henderson was a stern-faced woman in her 50s who showed Olivia to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor. "Payments due at the start of each week," she informed Olivia. "Breakfast is at 6, dinner at 6. You miss it, you go hungry. No men in the rooms, no loud noise after 9 o'clock." Olivia handed over $2 precious and was left alone in the room. She sat on the narrow bed and finally let the tears come. Everything that had happened since leaving Boston crashed over her. The grief of leaving her childhood home after her father's death had left her destitute, the humiliation of Charles Patterson's rejection, the terror of the stage robbery, and now the uncertainty of her future. But beneath the fear and sadness, there was something else. The memory of honey-colored eyes and a strong, steady presence. The feeling of capable hands at her waist. A voice offering help with no expectation of anything in return. Tucker Shepard. She shook her head, chiding herself. The man had simply been kind. She was being foolish, reading meaning into simple courtesy. Still, as she prepared for bed, she found herself hoping she might see him again. The next morning, Olivia set out to find work. She tried the general store first, where the owner informed her he had no positions available. The hotel had nothing. The restaurant was family-run and needed no help. By midday, she had been turned away from every business in town. "Problem is, there just aren't that many jobs for women out here," one shopkeeper told her apologetically. "Most ladies either work in their family businesses or take in laundry and sewing." Olivia returned to the boarding house discouraged. She had never done laundry for pay, had never needed to. Her father had been a banker before his business partner's embezzlement scheme had destroyed everything, leaving nothing but debts. She had been raised to run a household, to manage servants, to paint watercolors and play the piano. None of those skills seemed useful in a frontier town. That evening she sat in the boarding house parlor, attempting to appear occupied with a book while her mind churned with worry. 2 other boarders sat nearby, middle-aged women who worked as seamstresses and seemed to know everything about everyone in Moab. "Did you hear about Tucker Shepard?" one of them said to the other. "Martha Wilson was asking Mrs. Henderson just this morning if that new girl from Boston might be suitable." Olivia's ears pricked up at the mention of Tucker's name, though she kept her eyes on her book. "Suitable for what?" the other woman asked. "For Tucker, of course. Martha's been trying to find him a wife for 2 years now. Says it's not right. A man living out there all alone. She thinks he needs a good woman to make that ranch a proper home. Martha Wilson needs to mind her own business. If Tucker Shepard wanted a wife, he'd find one himself. Can't find what isn't there. There's barely any unmarried women of appropriate age in the whole county. That's why Martha thought of the new girl, saw her come in on yesterday's stage." Olivia's cheeks burned. They were discussing her as if she were livestock at auction. "She's pretty enough," the first woman conceded. "But is she sturdy? Ranch life isn't for the delicate. Won't matter if Tucker's not interested. And you know how he is, keeps to himself. Hasn't shown interest in anyone since what happened." "What happened?" the second woman asked, leaning forward eagerly. "You didn't hear. It was before your time, I suppose. Tucker was engaged before he came to Moab. Girl named Sarah something. They were supposed to marry, had it all planned. Then she up and married his brother instead. Broke his heart something fierce. That's why he came out here, to get away from all that." Olivia felt a pang of sympathy. So Tucker carried his own wounds. Perhaps that was why he had seemed to understand her situation without her having to explain it. "Well, heartbroken or not, he still needs a wife," the first woman insisted. "Man can't live on loneliness forever." Olivia closed her book and excused herself, unable to listen to more. In her room, she stood at the window looking out at the darkening sky. Somewhere beyond those red rock formations was Tucker's ranch, and Tucker himself, perhaps sitting in solitude much as she was now. The next day brought more fruitless job searching. Olivia was beginning to feel desperate when she remembered she did have one marketable skill. She could read and write well, and her penmanship was excellent. Perhaps she could offer services as a scribe or tutor. She was composing an advertisement to post at the general store when someone knocked on her door. Mrs. Henderson stood in the hallway, her expression slightly less stern than usual. "There's someone here to see you, a Mrs. Wilson. She's waiting in the parlor." Curious and slightly wary, Olivia went downstairs to find a plump, cheerful-looking woman in her 60s waiting with a warm smile. "Miss Edwards, I'm Martha Wilson. I hope you don't mind my calling on you unannounced, but I heard about your arrival and wanted to welcome you to Moab properly." She patted the seat beside her. "Please sit down." Olivia sat, instantly on guard after what she had overheard the previous evening. "I understand you came out here to marry Charles Patterson," Martha said without preamble, "and that the scoundrel changed his mind. Terrible way to treat a lady." "You must be in a difficult position." "I'm managing," Olivia said carefully. "Of course you are. You seem like a capable young woman." Martha's eyes twinkled. "I also heard that Tucker Shepard rescued you from those dreadful bandits. Quite the hero, our Tucker. He was very brave, yes." "He's a good man. One of the best I know. Works hard, honest as the day is long, and much too lonely out on that ranch of his." Martha leaned forward conspiratorially. "He needs a wife, Miss Edwards, and you need a husband. Seems to me like it could be a beneficial arrangement for both of you." Olivia felt heat rise to her face. "Mrs. Wilson, I appreciate your concern, but I couldn't possibly. Mr. Shepard and I barely know each other." "How well did you know Charles Patterson?" The question hit home. Olivia had never met Charles, had known him only through letters. "That's different," she said, though she wasn't sure how. "Is it? You were willing to marry a stranger then. Tucker's no stranger now. You've met him, seen his character. And I can tell you he's got a good spread, 300 acres with water rights. He's building something real out there. He just needs a partner." "Has Mr. Shepard asked you to arrange this?" Olivia asked, already knowing the answer. Martha had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Well, no. Tucker's too proud to ask for help with such things. But I've known him since he came to Moab, and I can see he's lonely. I thought if I could just introduce the possibility." "Mrs. Wilson, even if I were interested, which I'm not saying I am, you can't just arrange people's lives for them. Mr. Shepard might not want a wife at all, and he certainly might not want me." "Won't know unless we try, will we?" Martha stood, smoothing her skirts. "I'm having a small gathering this Sunday after church. Just a few neighbors, some food. I'd be delighted if you'd come. Tucker will be there." Before Olivia could protest, Martha had swept out, leaving her standing in the parlor, bewildered and flustered. Sunday arrived with clear blue skies. Olivia had not planned to attend Martha's gathering, but Mrs. Henderson informed her that all the boarders were going and it would be rude to refuse. Besides, Olivia admitted to herself she wanted to see Tucker again. She wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out her eyes, and pinned her dark hair up carefully. The other boarders nodded approvingly. "You look lovely, dear," one of them said. "That color suits you." The church was small but well-maintained, with wooden pews and simple stained glass windows. Olivia slipped into a back pew, not wanting to draw attention to herself. But she found her gaze scanning the congregation, looking for a tall figure with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin. She spotted him near the front, his head bowed in prayer. He wore clean clothes, his hair still damp as if he had bathed before coming to town. Something about seeing him in this setting, participating in the community with quiet reverence, made her heart skip. After the service, Martha appeared at Olivia's elbow as if by magic. "Come along, dear. Everyone's heading to my house. It's just a short walk." Olivia found herself swept along in a tide of friendly townspeople. Martha's house was a neat, adobe structure with a shaded courtyard where tables had been set up with food. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. Tucker was standing with a group of men, discussing something about cattle prices. He looked up as Olivia entered the courtyard and their eyes met. She saw surprise flicker across his face, followed by something else, something warm that made her breath catch. He excused himself from his conversation and made his way over to her. "Miss Edwards, I didn't expect to see you here. Mrs. Wilson can be very persuasive," Olivia said with a slight smile, "that she can." His own smile was crooked, almost shy. "Have you been well? Settling in all right?" "As well as can be expected, and you?" "Fine." "I've been fine." He seemed suddenly awkward, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Have you eaten? The food here is always good." They filled plates and found a quiet spot under a cottonwood tree. For a few minutes they ate in companionable silence, but Olivia could feel the weight of curious eyes watching them. "I apologize for Mrs. Wilson," Tucker said suddenly. "She means well, but she's got ideas about how other people should live their lives." "You know about her matchmaking attempts, then?" "Hard not to. She's been at it for months." He looked at her directly. "I want you to know I had nothing to do with her inviting you here. I wouldn't presume." "I know that," Olivia said gently. "You've been nothing but kind and respectful." "I also want you to know," he continued, his voice lower now, "that while I didn't ask Martha to meddle, I'm not sorry you're here. I've thought about you. Since the stage robbery, I've wondered how you were doing." Olivia's heart began to beat faster. "I've thought about you too." The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Tucker set down his plate. "Miss Edwards, Olivia, if I may call you that. I'm not a man who's good with fancy words. I live a simple life, and it's a hard one sometimes. But I've built something I'm proud of, and I think it could be a good life for the right person. I'm not asking for anything right now, but I'd like to know you better. Would you allow me to call on you properly?" This was happening so fast, yet somehow it felt right. Olivia thought of the long, lonely weeks she had spent traveling west, the fear and uncertainty that had plagued her since her father's death. She thought of Tucker facing down 4 armed bandits without hesitation, because it was the right thing to do. She thought of honey-colored eyes and capable hands and quiet strength. "Yes," she said, "I'd like that very much." His smile transformed his face, making him look younger, almost boyish. Yes. I come to town most Saturdays for supplies. Maybe I could take you to dinner next week. The hotel restaurant is decent. I'd enjoy that." They talked for the rest of the afternoon, discovering common ground and exploring differences. Tucker told her about his ranch, describing the red rock canyons and the small creek that ran through his property year-round. He talked about his cattle and his horses, about the 2 ranch hands who helped him, about his plans to expand someday. Olivia told him about Boston, about her father and the comfortable life she had led before everything fell apart. She found herself confessing fears and hopes she had shared with no one else. Tucker listened without judgment, his full attention on her in a way that made her feel truly seen. "I'm sorry about your father," he said. "Losing family is hard. I lost my mother when I was 19. It changes you." "Your father, still alive back in Missouri. We don't talk much anymore. After what happened with Sarah and my brother, there was too much bad feeling. Coming out here was a way to start fresh. You miss them. Your family," Tucker considered this. "Sometimes, but you can't live in the past." "I've built a new life here, and mostly I'm content with it. The only thing missing is someone to share it with." As the sun began to set and the gathering broke up, Tucker walked Olivia back to the boarding house. At the door, he took her hand gently. "Thank you for today. for giving me a chance." "Thank you for asking." He held her hand a moment longer, his thumb brushing softly across her knuckles, then released it and tipped his hat. "Until Saturday, then." Olivia watched him walk away, her hand still tingling from his touch. Inside, she found the other boarders waiting with eager questions, which she deflected as graciously as she could before escaping to her room. The week passed slowly. Olivia had finally found some work taking in mending and doing letter writing for several townspeople who couldn't read or write well. It wasn't much money, but it was something. Still, her savings were dwindling, and she knew she couldn't afford the boarding house much longer. Saturday arrived at last. Olivia changed her dress 3 times before settling on a green calico that Martha Wilson had helped her purchase from the general store. Tucker arrived precisely on time, looking uncomfortable in a clean shirt and string tie, his hair neatly combed. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "You look very handsome yourself." They walked to the hotel restaurant, where Tucker held her chair and ordered the best items on the menu. Over steak and potatoes, they continued the conversation from the previous week, delving deeper. "What made you decide to become a mail-order bride?" Tucker asked. "If you don't mind my asking." Olivia set down her fork. "After my father died and the debts were settled, there was nothing left. I had no money, no prospects. I could have tried to find work in Boston, but the only respectable jobs for women of my class were as governesses or companions, and those positions were scarce. Then I saw Charles Patterson's advertisement. He seemed kind in his letters, and he offered security. It seemed like the best option. And now I'm still figuring things out, but I don't regret coming west. Even with everything that's happened, there's something about this place. It feels like possibility." "It is that," Tucker agreed. "Out here, your past doesn't matter as much as what you make of your future. I like that about the West." After dinner, they walked through town as twilight fell. The evening was cool and pleasant, and Tucker offered his arm, which Olivia accepted. They talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing easily. "Can I show you something?" Tucker asked as they reached the edge of town. "Of course." He led her to a small rise overlooking the valley. From here, they could see the lights of Moab spread below and the dark shapes of the red rock formations silhouetted against the starlit sky. "I come here sometimes when I'm in town," Tucker said. "It reminds me why I stayed. Look at those stars. You can't see them like this in a city." Olivia tilted her head back, gazing at the vast sweep of the Milky Way overhead. He was right. She had never seen so many stars. "It's breathtaking." "Olivia," Tucker said, and something in his tone made her look at him. "I know we haven't known each other long. Maybe I'm moving too fast. But I'm 31 years old, and I've learned that life's too short to waste time pretending you don't feel something when you do." Her heart was pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I think about you all the time. I'm saying that when I saw you on that stage, something inside me woke up that's been asleep for years. I'm saying that I'd like to see where this could go if you're willing." Olivia found herself stepping closer to him. "I'm willing. I feel it too, Tucker. It scares me how much I feel it, how fast it's happening, but I can't deny it." He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm against her skin. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." His kiss was gentle at first, almost tentative, as if she were something precious that might break. But when she responded, rising on her toes and placing her hands on his chest, the kiss deepened. It was sweet and searching, full of promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "Olivia," he said again, his voice rough, Come see the ranch next Sunday. Let me show you what I'm offering. Then you can decide if it's something you could see yourself being part of. All right. Yes. The following Sunday, Tucker arrived with a wagon instead of his horse. He helped Olivia up onto the seat, and they set out northwest from Moab, following a rough trail into increasingly rugged country. It's about a 2-hour drive, Tucker explained. The land was cheap because it's so remote, but that's what I wanted. Space, privacy, a chance to build something that's really mine. As they traveled, the landscape grew more dramatic. Towering red rock formations rose around them like ancient cathedrals. The trail wound through canyons where the rock walls glowed crimson and orange in the sunlight. They crossed the small creek Tucker had mentioned, clear water running over smooth stones. "This is your water source?" Olivia asked. "One of them. There's also a good well near the house." "The creek runs year-round, which is rare out here. That's why I knew this land was special." Finally, they rounded a bend and there it was. Tucker's ranch spread out in a small valley, protected on 3 sides by red rock walls. The house was modest, built of adobe and wood, with a covered porch across the front. A barn stood nearby, along with several smaller outbuildings. Fences marked off pastures where cattle grazed, and Olivia could see horses in a corral. "It's not fancy," Tucker said, and she could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "But it's solid. I built most of it myself." "It's wonderful," Olivia said honestly. The setting was beautiful, and there was something appealing about the neat, orderly way everything was arranged. This was a place built with care and pride. Tucker helped her down from the wagon and showed her around. The barn was well maintained, the animals healthy and calm. The fences were sturdy, the pastures well managed. He introduced her to his 2 ranch hands, Jim and Carlos, who tipped their hats politely before making themselves scarce. Finally, Tucker brought her to the house. He seemed nervous as he opened the door. "I apologize for the mess. I'm not much of a housekeeper." The interior was dim after the bright sunlight, but as Olivia's eyes adjusted, she saw a large main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with a cast iron stove, and doors leading to what she assumed were bedrooms. The furniture was simple but well made. Everything was dusty and somewhat cluttered, the home of a man living alone, but the bones of it were good. "The roof doesn't leak, the stove draws well, and the well water is clean," Tucker said, as if selling her on the place. "There's 2 bedrooms, and I was thinking if things worked out, I could add on. Maybe build a proper dining room, more bedrooms eventually." Olivia walked to the window and looked out at the view. From here she could see the valley, the creek winding through it, the red rocks standing guard. She imagined what it would be like to wake up here every morning to make this place a real home. "What do you think?" Tucker asked quietly. She turned to face him. "I think it's beautiful. I think you've built something remarkable here. But could you live here? Could you be happy in such a remote place, so far from everything you've known?" Olivia considered this seriously. "I won't lie and say it wouldn't be an adjustment. I'm used to city life, to having neighbors close by and shops within walking distance. But Boston stopped feeling like home after my father died, and out here, there's something that appeals to me. The space, the quiet, the beauty. And you, Tucker, you appeal to me very much." He crossed the room to her, taking both her hands in his. "I'm not a rich man, Olivia. I can provide for you. You'd never go hungry or lack for necessities, but there won't be fancy dresses or servants or any of the things you grew up with. I don't care about those things. They didn't make me happy when I had them. It's hard work ranching. I'd need your help with things. Tending the garden, helping with the chickens, cooking and cleaning. It's not an easy life. I'm not afraid of hard work. I can learn. You'd be isolated out here." It's 2 hours to town, and in winter the trail can be impassable for weeks. You'd have only me for company most of the time. Would that be so terrible? Tucker smiled at that. Not for me, but I worry about you getting lonely. Tucker, Olivia said, squeezing his hands. I've been lonely in the middle of a city of thousands. Loneliness isn't about how many people are around. It's about connection, about mattering to someone. I think here with you I could matter. I could belong. You already matter, he said fiercely. You already belong if you want to. Then ask me. He took a breath. Olivia Edwards, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on me and this ranch and this life? I promise I'll work every day to make you happy, to build a good life for us. I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise I'll never stop trying. Yes, Olivia said, tears stinging her eyes. Yes, I'll marry you. Tucker pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and she felt something settle in her chest, something that had been restless and anxious for so long. This felt right. This felt like coming home. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Moab, with Martha Wilson beaming in the front pew and half the town in attendance. Olivia wore a simple white dress that Martha and the other women had helped her make. Tucker wore his Sunday best and couldn't stop smiling. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Tucker kissed her sweetly, and the congregation erupted in applause. Afterward, there was a celebration at Martha's house with food and music and dancing. I knew it, Martha said, hugging Olivia. I knew you two were perfect for each other. Thank you, Olivia said sincerely. For meddling, Martha laughed. Sometimes meddling is just another word for caring. As the sun began to set, Tucker and Olivia climbed into the wagon for the long drive back to the ranch. Their ranch now. Their home. The first weeks of marriage were an adjustment. Olivia had to learn how to cook on the temperamental stove, how to tend chickens and collect eggs, how to manage a household without servants. She burned biscuits and oversalted stew and struggled with the heavy washing. But Tucker was patient, helping when he could, never criticizing, always appreciative of her efforts. At night, they would sit on the porch in the cool evening air, and Tucker would tell her about his day, about which cows might be ready to calve soon, about a fence that needed mending, about his hopes for the ranch. Olivia would share her small victories and defeats, and they would laugh together at her domestic mishaps. Their physical relationship developed slowly and sweetly. Tucker was gentle and patient, attentive to her comfort. In the privacy of their bedroom, Olivia discovered a passion she had never known existed. Tucker made her feel cherished and desired, and she loved the way his careful control would slip when she touched him, the way he would whisper her name like a prayer. As autumn deepened into winter, Olivia found herself truly settling into ranch life. She made friends with Jim and Carlos, learning from them about the cattle and horses. She started a garden, planning for spring planting. She decorated the house with small touches, curtains for the windows, a tablecloth she embroidered, wildflowers in a jar. The isolation that Tucker had worried about didn't bother her as much as he had feared. She enjoyed the quiet, the rhythm of the days, the deep sense of peace that came from being in such a beautiful place. And she loved the evenings with Tucker, just the two of them, talking and laughing and growing closer. The first snow came in late November, dusting the red rocks with white. Tucker taught Olivia how to ride, patiently working with her until she felt confident on horseback. Together they would ride out to check on the cattle, bundled in warm coats, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. One evening in early December, as they sat before the fire, Tucker pulled Olivia into his lap. "Happy?" he asked, nuzzling her neck. "Incredibly." "You?" "More than I ever thought possible. When I came out here, I thought I was done with love, done with trusting anyone with my heart." I thought I'd just work my land and live alone and that would be enough. But it wasn't. I was so lonely, Olivia. I didn't even realize how lonely until you came along and filled all those empty spaces." Olivia turned in his arms to face him. "That first day when you rode down to help the stage, I thought you were the bravest man I'd ever seen. I still do. But now I know you're also the kindest, the most patient, the most loving. You rescued me, Tucker, not just from those bandits, but from a life without purpose, without hope." "You rescued me right back," he said softly. "From loneliness. From thinking I wasn't worthy of being loved. You made me believe in happy endings again." She kissed him then, pouring all her love into it, and he responded with equal fervor. They made love there in front of the fire, slow and sweet and achingly tender. Winter passed into spring, and Olivia's garden began to flourish. She learned to churn butter and make cheese, to preserve vegetables and bake bread that actually rose properly. The ranch was doing well under Tucker's careful management, and in April he was able to hire another hand and purchase more cattle. In late May, Olivia realized she had missed her monthly courses twice. She waited another week to be sure, then told Tucker over breakfast one morning. "I think I'm with child," she said, watching his face carefully. The joy that spread across his features was instant and unmistakable. He leapt up from his chair so fast it fell over, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around. "Truly? You're sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. We'll go to town tomorrow. I'll take you to Dr. Harrison. Oh, Olivia, this is the best news." He was so excited he could barely contain himself. That afternoon, he started making plans to add onto the house, sketching designs for additional bedrooms. Over the following weeks, he became almost comically protective, insisting she not lift anything heavy, worrying if she looked tired. "Tucker, women have been having babies for thousands of years," she reminded him gently. "I'm not made of glass, I know. I just want to make sure you're safe." "Both of you." Dr. Harrison confirmed the pregnancy and estimated the baby would arrive in late January. Tucker marked the date on the calendar and began counting down the days. As summer progressed and Olivia's belly began to swell, Tucker worked furiously on the addition to the house. Jim and Carlos helped, and by autumn they had added 2 new bedrooms and expanded the kitchen. Olivia sewed tiny clothes and knitted blankets, preparing for the baby's arrival. Martha Wilson rode out to visit regularly, bringing supplies and advice. She had delivered many babies in her time and promised to be there when Olivia's time came. "You're blooming," she told Olivia during one visit. "Motherhood suits you already." Winter arrived again, and Olivia grew larger and more uncomfortable. Tucker hovered constantly, bringing her pillows, rubbing her aching back, reading to her in the evenings. His tenderness made her fall even more deeply in love with him. On a cold night in late January, Olivia's labor began. Tucker rode through the darkness to fetch Martha Wilson while Jim stayed with Olivia, trying to keep her calm. By the time Tucker returned with Martha, the contractions were coming hard and fast. "Good strong contractions," Martha said approvingly. "This baby's ready to meet the world." Tucker stayed by Olivia's side through the long night, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. When the pain was at its worst, she gripped his hand so hard she feared she might break his fingers, but he never complained, never left her side. Finally, as dawn broke over the red rocks, their son was born. He came into the world wailing lustily, and when Martha placed him in Olivia's arms, she looked down at his red, wrinkled face and felt her heart expand impossibly. "He's perfect," she whispered. Tucker, tears streaming down his face, wrapped his arms around both of them. "You're amazing. You're both amazing. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for this gift." They named him Thomas after Tucker's late uncle who had encouraged him to follow his dreams out west. Little Thomas had Tucker's eyes and Olivia's dark hair, and from the first moment he was deeply loved. The early weeks were exhausting, filled with sleepless nights and endless feedings, but Tucker helped however he could, rocking Thomas when Olivia needed to rest, changing diapers without complaint, staring at his son with wonder in his eyes. "I never knew I could love anyone this much," he confessed one night as he watched Thomas sleep. "Except for you. The two of you are my whole world." Spring came again, and the ranch continued to prosper. They hired another hand and purchased adjacent land, expanding their holdings. Thomas grew from a tiny newborn into a chubby, happy baby who laughed at everything and adored his father. Olivia found deep satisfaction in her life. The work was hard, but rewarding. She had become capable and confident, managing the household with ease, helping Tucker with ranch decisions, raising their son. The frightened, uncertain woman who had stepped off the stage that day seemed like someone from another lifetime. On a warm evening in June, as they sat on the porch watching Thomas play with a wooden horse Tucker had carved, Olivia reflected on how much had changed. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if Charles Patterson hadn't changed his mind?" Tucker asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Sometimes, but I can't regret it, even though it was painful at the time. If he had gone through with the marriage, I never would have met you. I'd be living some comfortable but probably loveless existence in Moab, running a mercantile, wondering if this was all there was. Instead, you're stuck out here with me," Tucker teased. "Instead, I'm home with the man I love beyond measure, living a life that matters, raising our beautiful son in the most magical place in the world." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I wouldn't change a single thing." Tucker kissed the top of her head. "Neither would I. Though I have to admit, I'm glad those bandits stopped the stage that day. Otherwise, I might have just ridden past and never met you. Were you really willing to face down 4 armed men alone? For you?" "Yes. I didn't even know you yet, but something told me I couldn't just ride away." "Best decision I ever made." Thomas toddled over, demanding to be picked up, and Tucker scooped him into his arms, making the boy squeal with delight. Olivia watched them together, her heart full nearly to bursting. "We should have more," she said suddenly. Tucker looked at her in surprise. "More children, if we're blessed with them, yes. I'd like Thomas to have brothers and sisters. I'd like to fill this house with love and laughter." "I'd like that too," Tucker said, his eyes warm. "Very much." True to her hopes, Olivia found herself expecting again the following spring. This time the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their daughter was born in November 1881, during the first snowfall of the season. They named her Lily, and she was tiny and perfect with wisps of blonde hair and her father's smile. Thomas, now nearly 3, was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. Tucker built a cradle that rocked gently, and often Olivia would find him standing beside it, watching Lily sleep with that same expression of wonder he'd had when Thomas was born. The ranch continued to grow and thrive. They now had over 500 head of cattle and had built a reputation for quality livestock. Other ranchers came to Tucker for advice, and he was becoming a respected figure in the territory. But despite their success and growing wealth, Tucker and Olivia never lost sight of what mattered most. Every evening, no matter how busy the day had been, Tucker made time for his family. They would gather around the dinner table, sharing stories and laughter. After the children were in bed, Tucker and Olivia would sit together, talking about their dreams for the future, making plans, simply enjoying each other's company. "I love our life," Olivia told him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the red rocks gold and crimson. Some people search their whole lives for contentment and never find it. We're so blessed. We are, Tucker agreed, pulling her close. Sometimes I still can't believe how lucky I am, that you chose me, chose this life, that you're happy here. I'm more than happy. I'm fulfilled. I'm loved. I'm home. In 1883, their second son was born, a sturdy boy they named James. Then in 1885, another daughter arrived, whom they called Rose. The house that had once seemed so empty now rang with children's laughter and the patter of small feet. As the years passed, Tucker and Olivia grew from young lovers into partners who knew each other's thoughts before they were spoken, who could communicate with just a glance, who supported and strengthened each other through every challenge. The passion between them never faded, but it deepened into something richer, more complex, more enduring. The children grew. Thomas became his father's shadow, learning ranching from an early age, showing a natural aptitude for working with horses. Lily was quieter, thoughtful, with a talent for drawing that Olivia encouraged. James was adventurous and bold, always exploring. Rose was the baby, sunny and sweet-natured, beloved by all. By 1890, the ranch had expanded to over 1,000 acres. They had built a larger house, keeping the original structure but adding significantly to it. There was now a proper parlor, a dining room, 4 bedrooms, and even a small library where Olivia kept the books she had accumulated over the years. Tucker, now 43, had threads of silver in his brown hair, and his face was more weathered. But Olivia thought he had never been more handsome. He had grown into himself over the years, becoming more confident, more settled, but he still had that essential kindness that had drawn her to him from the first. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Tucker took Olivia back to the spot above Moab where he had first kissed her. The children stayed with Martha Wilson, who was now in her 70s, but still spry and still inclined to meddle, though now it was in other people's romantic affairs. Tucker and Olivia stood looking at the stars, just as they had that night so long ago, his arm around her waist. 10 years, he said. Seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. I know what you mean. Sometimes I still see that nervous man who asked me to marry him after knowing me only 2 weeks. Crazy, wasn't it? We barely knew each other. But somehow we knew enough. We knew what mattered. Tucker turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Olivia, these have been the best 10 years of my life. You've given me everything, love, children, a real home, purpose beyond just working the land. You saved me from a half-life. I was existing before you came along, but I wasn't truly living. You saved me too, Olivia said, tears in her eyes. When I stepped off that stage, I was lost and scared and had no idea what would become of me. You gave me a place to belong, a reason to hope. You showed me what real love looks like. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Here's to 10 more years and 10 after that, and as many as God grants us. I'll love you through all of them, Olivia promised. They stood there under the stars, holding each other, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a life of meaning and joy. The years continued to roll by. Tucker taught Thomas and James the ranching business, preparing them to eventually take over. Lily discovered she had a talent for teaching and began helping younger children in the area learn to read and write. Rose grew into a beautiful young woman with her mother's grace and her father's steady nature. In 1895, Thomas announced he wanted to marry a girl from town, a sweet-faced young woman named Emily who had been courting for 2 years. Tucker and Olivia gave their blessing, and the wedding was held at the ranch, a joyous celebration that brought together neighbors from miles around. Strange, isn't it? Olivia said to Tucker as they watched Thomas and Emily dance. "Our baby is married now." "Makes me feel old," Tucker admitted, "but also grateful. We've raised good children, you and I. We've given them roots and wings." A year later, Thomas and Emily presented them with their first grandchild, a boy they named Tucker after his grandfather. Holding his tiny grandson, Tucker wept openly. "I never imagined this," he told Olivia that night. "Being a grandfather, having all of this. It's so much more than I ever dreamed." More grandchildren followed as the years went by. Lily married a rancher from a neighboring spread. James decided to study law and moved to Salt Lake City, though he visited often. Rose married a schoolteacher and settled in Moab. Through it all, Tucker and Olivia remained the center of their growing family, the foundation upon which everything else was built. They still took morning rides together when they could, still sat on the porch in the evenings, still laughed at private jokes and shared quiet moments of connection. In 1905, as they celebrated their 25th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Tucker stood to make a toast. "25 years ago, I was a lonely man living a lonely life, convinced I'd never find happiness again. Then a stage robbery brought me the greatest gift I've ever received." He looked at Olivia, his eyes still full of the same love she'd seen that first day. "Olivia, you've been my partner, my lover, my best friend. You've given me a family, a real home, a life worth living. Every day with you is a blessing. Here's to 25 more years if we're lucky." "To 25 more," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Olivia stood and took Tucker's hand. "I came west a frightened woman with nothing but a carpetbag and $14, running from a failed plan and an uncertain future. You didn't just rescue me from bandits that day, Tucker. You rescued me from despair. You showed me that sometimes the worst things that happen to us are really blessings in disguise. Charles Patterson's rejection led me to you, to this life, to all of this." She gestured to their assembled family. "I wouldn't change a single moment." The celebration continued late into the night, filled with music and dancing and storytelling. But eventually, Tucker and Olivia slipped away to their room, seeking the quiet intimacy they still treasured. "You remember what you said to me the day we got married?" Olivia asked as they prepared for bed. "I said a lot of things that day. You said you couldn't promise it would be easy, but you could promise you'd never stop trying to make me happy. I remember. You've kept that promise, every single day for 25 years. Tucker pulled her into his arms. "Wasn't hard. Making you happy makes me happy. Simple as that." They made love that night with the practiced ease of long familiarity, but also with tenderness and passion that had never dimmed. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Olivia felt utterly content. The years moved forward. Tucker and Olivia grew older together, their hair graying, their faces lining, but their love never wavering. They handed more and more of the ranch operations to Thomas and James, who had returned from the city to help manage the family business. In 1912, as they sat on the porch watching yet another spectacular sunset, Tucker reached for Olivia's hand. "I've been thinking," he said, about how it all started. That stage robbery, those bandits never got caught, you know. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd ridden past that day, minded my own business. But you didn't. You couldn't. It's not in your nature to turn away from people in need. Maybe, or maybe something bigger was at work, fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, bringing us together." Olivia squeezed his hand. "I believe that. I believe we were meant to find each other, meant to build this life together. No regrets, not a single one. You. Only that I wasted so many years before I found you. But then again, maybe I needed those years to become the man you deserved." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the sun paint the red rocks in shades of fire. Around them, the ranch hummed with life, grandchildren playing, cattle lowing in the distance, the sounds of home. In 1918, Tucker fell ill with pneumonia. For 2 frightening weeks, Olivia nursed him, barely leaving his side. The whole family gathered, fearing the worst. But Tucker was strong, and with Olivia's constant care and stubborn will, he recovered. "You can't leave me yet," she told him during the worst of it. "We have an agreement, remember? We're in this together." "Not planning on going anywhere without you," he managed to rasp out. When he was well again, they sat together in the garden Olivia had expanded over the years. "I saw my life without you," Tucker said quietly. "When I was sick, there were moments when I thought I might not make it, and all I could think was how empty everything would be without you in it. You're not just my wife, Olivia. You're the reason my heart beats." "And you're mine," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Promise me we'll have more time. As much as we're given, I promise." They were given several more years. Years filled with more grandchildren, watching their children succeed, seeing their ranch continue to prosper. They took joy in simple things: morning coffee together, evening walks, the touch of hands, shared glances across a crowded room. In the spring of 1923, Tucker and Olivia celebrated their 45th anniversary. Tucker was now 76, Olivia 63. They sat on the porch, surrounded by 3 generations of family, and marveled at the life they had built. 45 years, Tucker said, shaking his head in wonder. "Almost half a century." "Best years of my life," Olivia said simply. Thomas stood to speak, now a grandfather himself. "I want to thank you both for showing all of us what real love looks like, for building something lasting, for creating a legacy that will continue long after all of us are gone. Everything we are, everything we have, started with the two of you and the choice you made to build a life together." There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. That night, alone again in their room, Tucker held Olivia close. "I love you," he whispered. "I've told you that thousands of times over the years, but I want you to know I mean it just as much now as the first time I said it. I know you do. And I love you just as much. More even. I didn't know it was possible to love someone as much as I love you." They drifted off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, as they had done countless nights before. Tucker Shepard died peacefully in his sleep in the summer of 1925, 2 months after his 78th birthday. Olivia woke to find him still beside her, his hand in hers, a slight smile on his weathered face. The doctor said his heart had simply stopped, worn out after a long and active life. The funeral was attended by everyone in the county and beyond. Tucker had been a respected rancher, a fair employer, a good neighbor, but most of all, he had been a devoted husband and father. The stories shared that day painted a picture of a man who had lived fully and loved deeply. Olivia stood at the gravesite, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and felt the weight of loss pressing down on her. But also gratitude. Gratitude for 47 years of marriage, for a love that had sustained and strengthened her, for a partner who had walked beside her through everything life brought. "Goodbye, my love," she whispered as they lowered him into the ground. "Thank you for rescuing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for everything." In the days and weeks that followed, Olivia grieved deeply. The house felt empty without Tucker's presence, without his voice calling her name, without the sound of his footsteps on the porch. But she was not alone. Her children rallied around her, making sure she was cared for, keeping her company. Thomas found her one evening in the room that had been Tucker's study, holding one of his old hats. "How are you managing, Mama?" "Some moments are harder than others," she admitted. "I miss him terribly. But I also feel grateful. We had so many years together, so much love. Not everyone gets that. He loved you until his last breath. I know, and I'll love him until mine." Olivia lived another 8 years, surrounded by her family, finding joy in her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, taking pride in the continued success of the ranch. But everyone could see that part of her had gone with Tucker. She often spoke of him, sharing stories, keeping his memory alive. In the summer of 1933, Olivia's health began to fail. As she lay in her bed, weak but at peace, her children gathered around her. "Don't grieve," she told them. "I've lived a wonderful life. I've been blessed beyond measure, and soon I'll see your father again. I've missed him so much." Rose, the youngest, held her mother's hand. "Tell us again how you met." Olivia smiled, her eyes growing distant with memory. "There was a stage robbery. I was so frightened. And then this man rode down from the ridge, brave and strong, willing to face down 4 armed bandits to protect people he didn't even know. He saved us that day. And then, slowly, surely, he saved me in every way a person can be saved. He gave me a home, a purpose, a family. He loved me like I never thought possible. Your father was the best man I ever knew." "He'd say the same about you," Thomas said gently. "We saved each other," Olivia said, her voice growing weaker. "He rescued me from loneliness and fear. I rescued him from the same. That's what real love does. It rescues us from the darkness and brings us into the light." She closed her eyes, and a peaceful smile crossed her face. "I can see him," she whispered. "He's waiting for me, still so handsome, still my Tucker." Those were her last words. Olivia Edwards' shepherd died peacefully, surrounded by love, at the age of 71. They buried her beside Tucker, under the vast Utah sky, with the red rocks standing eternal watch. The headstone read, "Together in life, together in death, 2 souls who saved each other." The ranch continued under Thomas's management, and then his sons after him. It remained in the family for generations, a testament to what Tucker and Olivia had built. Their story became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The great-grandchildren who never met them knew their names and their story. They knew about the stage robbery, about a lonely rancher who rode down from a ridge to help strangers, about a frightened mail-order bride who found courage and love. They knew about 2 people who had taken broken pieces of their lives and created something beautiful. Years became decades, decades became a century. The ranch evolved with the times, but at its heart remained the values Tucker and Olivia had established: hard work, integrity, family, love. And on certain evenings, when the sunset painted the red rocks gold and crimson, some family members swore they could feel the presence of those 2 souls, still together, still watching over the land they had loved, the family they had created, the legacy they had left. It had started with a robbery and a rescue. It had grown into a love story that transcended time. Tucker had rescued Olivia from bandits and uncertainty. Olivia had rescued Tucker from loneliness and despair. Together, they had rescued each other from incomplete lives, finding in one another the missing pieces that made them whole. Their story proved that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, that love can be found in unexpected places, that 2 broken people can heal each other and build something lasting. It was a story of courage and kindness, of taking chances on strangers, of choosing love even when it seems risky. Above all, it was a story about what happens when 2 lonely souls find each other in the vast wilderness of life and decide to walk the rest of the journey together. It was a story about rescue, redemption, and the transformative power of love. And it was a story that would continue to inspire long after the last echo of their voices had faded into the red rock canyons they had called home.